The small jade pendant felt cool and smooth in my hand. My own fingernails had pressed into my palm so hard that they left deep red crescent marks. This was the only significant thing my mother had left me, an heirloom that family stories claimed could alter a person's fate. In my previous life, I had foolishly believed in kindness and given it to my sister-in-law, Clara. My Aunt Martha had been the one to convince me, her words painting a picture of a struggling widow who just needed a little help to get by. She said Clara wanted to use the pendant's supposed luck to make her difficult life a little easier. Her gentle and persuasive performance had worked on me then, and I had handed it over without a second thought. But the result of my generosity was catastrophic. Clara didn't just use the pendant to improve her standing, she actively conspired with Martha to have me thrown out of my own home. My life ended in a way I don't like to remember, alone and miserable. Thinking back on all of it, my grip on the pendant tightened. This time would be different. This time, I would not let them succeed. Alara, a soft voice called from the kitchen doorway. Clara hasn't been feeling very well lately. She keeps talking about being short on good luck. I seem to remember you have a jade pendant, don't you? Could you perhaps consider letting her borrow it for a little while? Martha stood there, her voice as gentle as ever. A pendant? I looked up from my work, pretending to be confused, even as I felt a cold knot of contempt forming in my stomach. Are you talking about the one my mother left for me? That's unfortunate. I was out working a few days ago and I seem to have lost it. Martha's expression faltered for just a moment before she quickly smoothed it over with her usual gentle mask. She hurried over to my side, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Alara, that was your Aunt John's heirloom. How could you have been so careless as to lose it? Why don't I help you look for it? Let's go search together. What's lost is lost, I replied coolly, not giving her an inch. I don't really have the energy to go on a search for it. I untied my apron and brushed it off. Besides, I thought you once told me it was just an ordinary pendant. Why is it suddenly such a treasure now? Her face twitched slightly, but she managed to force a placid smile. I just meant that it was a heartfelt gift from your Aunt Jean. Perhaps just seeing it would help Clara feel a bit better. Feel better. In my last life, I had trusted her supposed concern, and it led to my complete ruin. This time, I wouldn't believe a single word out of her mouth. Sister-in-law? A delicate voice drifted in from outside the door. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Clara walked slowly into the room. She was wearing a faded cotton dress that had been washed so many times it was nearly white, and her hair was combed neatly, all contributing to an image of innocent helplessness. Her eyes moved from me to Martha. Martha, she said softly, please don't put yourself out for me. I'm doing fine. Her words had the intended effect, softening Martha's expression immediately. Martha nodded at her, her voice gentle. Clara, you sit down for a moment. Alara and I just need to talk a little more. Clara is part of our family now, she said, turning her head to address me with a hint of displeasure in her tone. You don't need to be so cold toward her. I'm just a normal woman, I retorted, my voice flat. It takes all my effort just to take care of myself. I don't have any extra energy for other people. With that, I turned and walked back to my room. It was only when the door was firmly closed behind me that I let out a long sigh of relief. The pendant was still clutched tightly in my hand, and it felt as if I was holding my entire future. This time, no one was going to take it away from me. That night, I gently polished the smooth surface of the pendant. Outside, the wind rustled through the fields, making the quiet of the house feel even more profound. In my past life, my own weakness had given them the opportunity to take advantage of me. Now, I had to protect not only this pendant, but my entire life. I took a needle and pricked the tip of my finger. A single drop of blood slid onto the jade. Instantly, a faint, warm glow spread across its surface, almost as if it had absorbed the blood. I closed my eyes and could feel a warm current flowing from the pendant into my body. Vaguely, I sensed a new kind of strength circulating within me. I couldn't describe what it was, but I knew instinctively that this was the pendant's real power. This must have been the secret to how Clara had managed to attract so much good fortune in my past life. I looked down at the glowing jade and murmured, "This time, you belong only to me." I was at the stove the next morning, busy preparing breakfast. Just as the water in the pot reached a boil, there was a soft knock at the door. "Sister-in-law, may I come in?" It was Clara's voice, deliberately soft and sweet, as if she were afraid of disturbing me. I didn't bother to answer. Turning with the teapot, I saw she had already pushed the door open and entered. She was wearing a mended cotton jacket, her expression a perfect blend of shyness and a desire to please. "What is it?" I asked, setting the teapot down, my tone deliberately flat. She looked down at the floor, wringing her hands together, and hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Sister-in-law, Martha mentioned yesterday that you have a jade pendant, the one your Aunt Jean left you. I was wondering if I could just take a look at it." My gaze hardened slightly, so she couldn't hold back any longer. I looked up, feigning a look of confusion, and then shook my head with a regretful expression. "I'm sorry, but that pendant is lost." "Lost?" She looked up, startled, and I saw a flash of genuine panic in her eyes before she quickly concealed it. "Sister-in-law, that was an heirloom from Aunt Jean. How could it possibly be lost?" "Lost is lost," I replied coldly. "It must have fallen out of my pocket by accident. Perhaps when I was working up on the mountain. Who can say?" She bit her lower lip, arranging her face into an expression of profound regret, but her eyes kept scanning my face, trying to find any sign that I was lying. "Sister-in-law, shouldn't you try to find it?" She probed, her voice cautious. "It's a very important item." I glanced at her, my voice turning icy. "That's none of your business. It was important, yes, but it's gone now. Where do you expect me to look for it?" My sharp words seemed to startle her, and she quickly waved her hands in front of her. I I didn't mean anything by it. I just wanted to offer my help. Martha said that this item is incredibly significant to our family. That's why Enough, I cut her off. There's no reason to mention it again. She immediately fell silent, but the look of unwillingness was clearly written on her face. She looked like she wanted to say more, but I simply turned my back on her, picked up the kettle, and began adding water to the pot on the stove, completely ignoring her presence. I heard her stand there for another moment before she finally seemed to give up and leave, her footsteps fading dejectedly down the hall. As I expected, by noon, Martha started probing again. "Alara," she began, putting down her chopsticks as if a thought had just occurred to her. "Clara just told me that she wants to go up the mountain to help you find the pendant." I sneered inwardly. I was fully aware of their little coordinated performance. Outwardly, I just said, "There's no need to look. It's lost. It would be a complete waste of time and effort. What would be the point?" She frowned as if my indifference was personally offensive to her. "Elara, that was an heirloom from Aunt Jean. How can you be so casual about it? Clara is only trying to be helpful." "I said there's no need," I repeated, looking directly at her, my eyes cold and unyielding. She opened her mouth, as if to argue further, but seeing the resolve in my expression, she closed it again without another word. After the meal, she walked out into the yard with her hands clasped behind her back, muttering something under her breath. I watched her retreat, a cold smile touching my lips. This time, I had seen their true colors. No matter how carefully they acted, they couldn't fool me again. One evening, just after it had gotten dark, my room door was gently pushed open. "Sister-in-law, are you asleep?" It was Clara again. I frowned. This was the third time in the last few days she'd come to me. "It's so late. What do you want?" My voice held a clear note of impatience. She was carrying a small oil lamp, and her expression was as soft as water. "Sister-in-law, I was worried you might be upset about the pendant, so I wanted to come and chat with you." I had to suppress a smirk. She certainly knew how to put on a kind and caring act, but I knew she was up to no good. "I have nothing to be upset about. You should go back to your room." "Sister-in-law, actually, I know you can't bear to part with that pendant," she said, putting the lamp down on the small table. She slowly approached my bed and whispered, "Why don't we go look for it together tomorrow? Maybe you just forgot where you put it." As she spoke, she reached out and took hold of my arm, her grip gentle but insistent. I pulled my arm away from her grasp, stood up, and asked with a cold smile, Clara, aren't you a little too concerned about my pendant? She froze for a moment, her eyes darting around the room nervously. Then she gave an awkward little chuckle. How could that be? Sister-in-law, I'm just worried you're sad about losing it. I think you're coveting it, I stated plainly, my eyes narrowing, piercing straight through her pretense. Her face immediately flushed a deep red. She waved her hands frantically. Sister-in-law, you've misunderstood me. I don't care what you're trying to do, but I advise you not to waste your efforts. I cut her off coldly. That pendant has been gone for a long time. Even if you want it, you won't get the chance. She was stunned into silence, her expression shifting from surprise to unconcealed disappointment. I ignored her, turned, and slammed the door shut, leaving her standing alone in the hallway. Listening to her footsteps finally fade away, I let out a long breath. For the next few days, Clara seemed to have toned down her efforts, but I knew this was just the calm before the storm. During dinner one evening, Martha suddenly made a suggestion. Alara, tomorrow when we go up the mountain to work, let's look for the pendant again. Clara keeps mentioning it. She feels it was a special gift from Aunt Jean and shouldn't just be lost on the mountain like that. I deliberately acted nonchalant. The mountain is so big, what's the point of looking? We have to work anyway, she said, as if it were no big deal. We can just look around while we're at it. I didn't answer her, just lowered my head and took a few more bites of rice, but I was secretly making my own calculations. Their patience was probably wearing thin. Their constant probing these past few days had already confirmed their greed. At the crack of dawn, I got up, put on my padded jacket, and took the pendant from its hiding spot under my pillow, tucking it securely into my shirt. The cold wind howled outside, and a thin layer of frost coated the eaves of the house. I pulled my clothes tighter around myself, secretly planning for the day ahead. Martha's attitude these past few days had made me increasingly certain that her concern for Clara wasn't just superficial family kindness, but was driven by an ulterior motive. Especially regarding the pendant, her constant questioning was just a way to test if I still had it hidden away. Since they had such intentions, I couldn't just sit back and wait for them to act. During breakfast, Clara came over holding a small bowl. It contained half a bowl of porridge left over from the previous night, with a few vegetable leaves floating on top. She smiled weakly and said in a thoughtful tone, Sister-in-law, we have work this morning and there isn't much rice left in the house. I cooked this up first. You should have some. I looked up at her, sneering inwardly. This pathetic bowl of porridge was probably her deliberate attempt to make people think the family was so poor, all to gain sympathy. Clara, you eat it. I don't like to eat porridge in the morning, I said, pushing the bowl back toward her, my tone cold. She hesitated for a moment, then gave a somewhat awkward smile, as if she had been wronged but didn't want to cause a fuss. Just then, Martha walked in, holding her own bowl of thin rice gruel. Seeing the scene, her face darkened. She put down her bowl and glared at me. Alara, Clara got up early to make you breakfast. How can you not even say thank you? She didn't even have any of this porridge herself. I said I don't want to eat it. Are you going to force me? I looked up directly at her, a hint of sarcasm in my voice. If Clara treasures this porridge so much, then she should have it. Are we really so poor that we're short one breakfast in this house? Martha was choked by my words and a flash of embarrassment crossed her face, but she quickly reverted to her usual gentle demeanor, letting out a long sigh. Her voice carried a tone of accusation. Alara, I know you're unhappy, but Clara is already having a hard enough time. Can you please stop being so cold and sarcastic all the time? Cold and sarcastic? I chuckled softly, put down my bowl and chopsticks, stood up, and turned back to my room. Inside, I leaned against the door, my fingers unconsciously tightening around the pendant in my shirt. This exchange made me even more certain that Martha had long since decided Clara was more important than I was. Behind her facade of a caring elder was just a desire to use her brother's death as a convenient excuse to favor Clara. At noon, I deliberately took out some cooking oil that I usually saved, planning to make a small dish to send to the village foreman's family. Just as I finished chopping the ingredients, Clara sidled up to the stove again. She said softly, Sister-in-law, why are you suddenly making so much food today? We don't have much grain left. I looked at her and said with a cold smile, I'm sending this to the foreman's family to borrow some of their firewood. That should be acceptable, right? Her expression stiffened for a moment, but quickly changed to one of regret. Sister-in-law, we should be saving what we can at home. The foreman's family isn't short on this little bit of oil. Just then, Martha came in from outside. Seeing me busy at the stove, she casually asked, Ilara, what are you doing? Taking something over to the foreman's family, I replied without looking up. Taking things? We're not well off right now. Aren't you being a bit too casual with our resources? She frowned, her voice tinged with reproach. I stopped what I was doing, straightened up, and looked at her, my tone unhurried. The family isn't well off, but we're all working. Why should I be the only one scrimping and saving? Clara doesn't work all day and eats the most. How come no one says anything about her? My words were like a stone dropped into a calm pond, instantly creating ripples. Martha's face changed. She quickly said, Clara isn't well. She can't do heavy work. You know that. Not well? Someone who can work but doesn't and puts on this act every day? Is she afraid people don't know how pitiful she is? I sneered. Martha was stunned for a moment, then she grabbed my hand. She said in a low voice, Ilara, don't be so aggressive. Clara just wants to help us. She doesn't mean anything else. Is that so? I shook off her hand. I said coldly, in that case, Clara should do what she's supposed to do and stop using her supposed grievances as an excuse all day. With that, I turned and left, tossing the ingredients from the stove aside. That night, I deliberately took the pendant from its hiding place and put it under the pillow beside me as I slept. I pretended to be completely unguarded, wanting to see if Martha would finally make a move. In the dead of night, while I was half asleep, I heard the door being gently pushed open. A faint sliver of moonlight seeped in through the crack, accompanied by soft, cautious footsteps slowly approaching the bed. My heart began to race, but I forced myself to continue feigning sleep. The footsteps stopped right beside my bed. Then, I heard the soft rustle of fabric, as if someone had knelt down and was searching for something along the edge of the mattress. She came just as I had expected. The next moment, I felt a slight movement near my pillow. A pair of hands was tentatively feeling for something underneath it. I suppressed the anger rising in me and kept my eyes closed until those hands quietly took the pendant. The footsteps retreated and the door was gently closed. I slowly opened my eyes. The room was quiet again. I sneered. All of this had happened exactly as I had anticipated. The next morning, I got up and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. Martha and Clara were already sitting in the main room. One was flipping through a newspaper, and the other had her head down, fiddling with some needlework. Morning, Ilara, Martha said, looking up at me, her tone exactly the same as usual, as if the events of last night had never happened. I nodded, brought out the breakfast, and set it on the table. I pretended to say casually, Martha, has the village been a bit unsettled lately? I kept feeling like someone came into my room last night while I was sleeping, and something by my pillow seems to be missing. She flinched slightly, but quickly regained her composure. She looked up and smiled. Maybe you were just too tired and dreaming. No one in the village would dare break in at night. Really? I looked at her with a cold smile. Then I really need to find out if it was a dream or not. After all, what's missing is very important. Hearing this, she put down the newspaper, her voice now holding a hint of probing interest. Ilara, what did you lose? Should I help you look for it? The jade pendant my mom left me, I said, staring directly into her eyes, enunciating each word clearly. This time her face finally changed. First, she was stunned. Then she put on a helpless expression. Ilara, didn't you say that thing was lost a long time ago? How has it suddenly reappeared? I don't know either, I retorted with a cold smile. Maybe I hid it too well before and forgot where it was. But I'm sure it was there last night. And this morning it's gone. Isn't that a coincidence? She looked down, lost in thought for a moment, then suddenly stood up, her voice becoming somewhat impatient. Don't overthink it. I'll go to the village and ask around for you, see if anyone has seen it. Then I'll have to trouble you, I said, watching her retreating back coldly, feeling nothing but contempt for her guilty conscience. Martha had just left when Clara cautiously walked into the kitchen, a hint of anxiety on her face. "Sister-in-law, I heard you lost your pendant," she said softly, but her voice concealed a prying tone. "Don't worry, I'll help you look for it." "Thanks, Clara," I said, raising an eyebrow at her, my gaze as sharp as a knife. "But there's no need. This pendant recognizes its owner. It's useless if someone else takes it." Her face paled slightly as if she were startled by my words, but she quickly reverted to her usual fragile demeanor. "Sister-in-law, I really just want to help you. Please don't misunderstand." "Misunderstand?" I smiled, then looked down and continued clearing the dishes. "That's not necessarily true." Seeing my cold tone, she didn't dare say more, turned and quickly left. I watched her retreat, already understanding that last night's incident was no coincidence. The two of them had been plotting to get the pendant for a long time. This was all just a play they had colluded on. Over the next few days, I deliberately pretended not to care about the pendant while secretly observing their movements. Martha appeared even more enthusiastic than usual, frequently going in and out of the village under the pretext of looking for it. Each time she returned, she would feign regret and tell me there were no clues. Clara, on the other hand, became unusually docile. She stayed by the stove every day, lacking her usual air of superiority. But her small actions betrayed her. She would occasionally glance at me out of the corner of her eye, as if trying to guess if I had noticed anything. This hypocritical pair seemed increasingly ridiculous in my eyes. I thought with a sneer, this round, I'll make them lose utterly and completely. Ever since Martha started meddling with the distribution of village work assignments, Clara's status had suddenly risen. She always put on a delicate act to avoid heavy labor, but always used the excuse, "Martha asked me to help manage everyone," and began bossing people around on the community project. I stood in the yard watching her hold a work credit sheet, confidently addressing several project members. Her tone, though soft, carried a hint of smug superiority, and those people were like her pawns to be moved at her will. "Clara, isn't this distribution a bit unfair?" a young woman from the project asked timidly. "Why do I work in the fields every day, but my work credits are still lower than yours?" Clara smiled innocently. She said softly, "Martha said that even though I don't work in the fields, I handle paperwork for everyone every day, manage supplies, and these are all part of the job." I watched coldly, sneering inwardly. These jobs were clearly just excuses she had made up for herself. Soon after, the village organized collective labor to repair the irrigation ditches. Because the task was arduous, the foreman personally assigned tasks to the project members. I was assigned the task of carrying mud. Though tiring, it was at least fair. But when I reported to the work site that morning, I discovered my task had been changed to the dirtiest, most exhausting job, shoveling slurry. And Clara was assigned the easy job of record keeping. I looked coldly at Martha, who was standing next to the foreman, already understanding everything. "Foreman, what's going on? Weren't the tasks assigned yesterday?" I walked over and asked bluntly. The foreman frowned. Before she could speak, Martha cut in. "Ilara, tasks are assigned for maximum efficiency. Clara is weak and not suited for physical labor. Record keeping is a perfect fit for her." "And me? I'm suited for shoveling slurry?" I sneered, my gaze sharp as I looked at her. "Ilara, everyone is trying to complete the task. Don't be so calculative," she said in a low voice, her tone clearly impatient. I questioned Martha, word by word. "What makes you think I'm stronger than the other women? Aren't you being too biased in these assignments?" She was stunned for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. "Ilara, I'm just assigning based on the actual situation." I couldn't be bothered to argue with her anymore. I turned to find the foreman. The foreman was clearly a bit unhappy with Martha's interference. But since Martha was the head of the community project, she couldn't say much. "Foreman, this assignment is unfair. If Clara can't do heavy work, she can do something else, like cleaning tools. She can't just do nothing, right?" I looked directly at the foreman, my voice firm. The foreman hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll readjust it." After this incident, though Clara didn't say anything, her hostility towards me deepened. I could tell she was spreading a lot of rumors about me behind my back, saying I didn't respect the team's arrangements and was deliberately picking fights with her, but I ignored all of it because my own plan had already begun. In the early morning, I mixed the enchanted spring water into a bucket of drinking water and took it to the edge of the village fields to share with everyone. The farm work had been heavy these days, and everyone was exhausted. After drinking the water I brought, many people showed surprised expressions. Hilara, why is this water so sweet? An old farmer asked, his face full of doubt. I smiled and casually said, my family used to have an old well. This water is from that well. Maybe it's a bit better than ordinary water. No wonder, another person said. I feel so much more refreshed after drinking it. I was secretly pleased. The effect of the enchanted spring water was indeed remarkable. For the next few days, I got up early every day, took the enchanted spring water to the fields, and shared it with everyone. Gradually, the villagers began to see me in a new light. Those who had initially been dissatisfied with me due to Martha's instigation also gradually changed their attitude. Before long, the foreman suddenly came to my door. Alara, I hear you've been doing good work lately. Everyone in the village says you're capable, she said, handing me a form. This is the village's grain distribution sheet. I want you to take a look at it. My heart leapt with joy. I knew this was the foreman's approval of me and also an opportunity. After carefully reviewing the sheet, I proposed some adjustments. After listening, the foreman nodded repeatedly. After that day, the foreman gradually entrusted me with some miscellaneous tasks, which were originally managed by Clara. Clara clearly sensed something. She tried to find the foreman several times under various pretexts, but was always brushed off. Her expression grew increasingly sour, and she even deliberately made things difficult for me a few times. But I responded to all of it with a cold smile. Finally, one day, the village held a meeting for all the community project members to discuss grain distribution. I sat in the meeting room, watching Martha and Clara deliberately sit next to each other, smug smiles on their faces. I already had a plan. At the meeting, the foreman praised the recent distribution situation, especially mentioning the adjustment plan I had participated in. Ilara has helped me a lot these past few days. Her suggestions were very good, the foreman said. I've decided to put her in charge of the daily affairs of the community project from now on. As soon as these words were spoken, Clara's face instantly turned deathly pale. She stood up, her voice somewhat shrill. Foreman, I've always been in charge of this work. Why the sudden change? The foreman glanced at her coldly. During the days you were in charge, how many problems did the project have? You know very well. But She still wanted to argue, but the foreman cut her off. If you're not satisfied, you can go talk to Comrade Martha. I assign work based on who is more suitable, not on who says so. Clara's face turned even uglier. She turned to look at Martha, her eyes full of grievance. Martha frowned, about to speak, but I spoke first. Foreman, since you trust me, I definitely won't let you down. The foreman nodded. Good. It's settled then. I smiled faintly, my gaze sweeping over Clara, seeing her lower her head, unable to hide her anger. A wave of satisfaction washed over me. This open and secret struggle, I had finally gained the upper hand. In the morning, the village loudspeaker blared. This afternoon, all villagers must attend the village committee's agricultural summary meeting. The foreman requires everyone to be on time. When I heard the broadcast, I was about to hang out the washed clothes in the yard. Hearing this news, I had a faint feeling that something was about to happen. The entire morning, Clara was incredibly busy. She bustled back and forth in the village, occasionally carrying a basket, visiting the foreman's house and other villagers' homes. Her words carried a hint of showing off. The foreman said that at this meeting, outstanding project members will be praised and there will be rewards. I really hope our project can bring some glory to the village. I watched coldly, just smiling without saying a word. Her vanity was practically written all over her face, as if she wished everyone knew how important she was. In the afternoon, the open space by the village committee building was packed with people. The villagers sat on the ground, their faces full of anticipation. The foreman stood at the front, holding a stack of papers, and began to summarize the village affairs and agricultural achievements of the recent period. Everyone has performed well this quarter, especially some of the project members who have worked hard and contributed a lot to the village. The foreman's words drew a round of applause. Clara, standing in the crowd, puffed out her chest, a smug smile on her face. However, some things have not been satisfactory. The foreman's tone shifted, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, finally resting on Clara. For example, someone, driven by vanity, improperly altered the village's material distribution records, causing several villagers to face grain shortages. The foreman's words silenced the entire crowd. Clara's face instantly turned deathly pale, her eyes darting away, her body instinctively shrinking back into the crowd. "Clara, step forward," the foreman said gravely. All eyes turned to her. Clara hesitated for a moment, then braced herself and walked out from the crowd, her head bowed, not daring to look up. "Foreman! Foreman!" she stammered, her voice full of panic. "You don't need to explain," the foreman cut her off coldly. "The village officials have already investigated this thoroughly. In order to show off in the village without approval, you improperly allocated the team's reserve grain to the community project. As a result, several needy families in the village received less grain. Do you realize how serious this is?" I just... Clara's voice trembled, her face growing more and more embarrassed. "You just wanted others to think highly of you, right?" The foreman exposed her ruthlessly. "Don't think the team doesn't know about your little tricks. You falsified things in the name of the project several times, wasting village resources. The project is here to help build the countryside, not to boost your ego." The people around began to whisper. Some villagers had clearly harbored resentment against her for a long time and couldn't help but mutter, "I knew it. This girl looks quiet and gentle, but why does she always talk like a bureaucrat?" So that's what was going on. Hey, those few pounds of wheat our family was short last month, maybe she was the one who swiped them. Aren't all the project members here to work? She just takes benefits and doesn't do any work. Really despicable. Listening to these comments, Clara's face flushed crimson, her hands tightly clutching the hem of her clothes, almost unable to stand steady. "Clara, from today onwards, your project management duties are temporarily suspended," the foreman declared decisively, her gaze sweeping over her coldly. "You first reflect properly. When you finally decide to focus on proper work, we'll talk about other things." As soon as these words were spoken, Clara's tears finally gushed out. She covered her face and ran out of the crowd. The surrounding villagers showed no sympathy. Some even chuckled coldly. After the meeting ended, the villagers dispersed in twos and threes. When they passed by me, someone said with a smile, "Alara, that grain distribution sheet you made before was really good." The foreman praised it several times. "Yeah, Alara, the village really owes you this time. I heard you're very conscientious in your work. Even the village officials like to consult with you." I smiled politely, saying modestly, "Not at all, everyone helped, I just did my best." That Clara girl is just dishonest. Always thinking about showing off and ended up digging her own grave. Someone couldn't help but sigh. Listening to these words, I just smiled without speaking, but I knew in my heart this was exactly the result I wanted. Clara's vanity had finally made her reap what she sowed, and through this incident, I had further solidified the trust of the village officials and villagers. In the evening, I returned to the project site. I saw Clara sitting on the doorstep, her face pale, her eyes vacant. When she saw me, a complex emotion flickered in her eyes, but she said nothing, just lowered her head, not daring to meet my gaze. "Clara, you should be glad that this time it was only your duties that were suspended. Otherwise, with the foreman's temper, she wouldn't have let you off so easily," I said lightly, without a trace of sympathy in my voice. She looked up, her eyes filled with resentment, but she quickly suppressed it. She said softly, "Sister-in-law, I know you've always looked down on me. Are the things you've done worthy of my respect?" I sneered and turned to go inside. Behind me, I heard her suppressed sobs, but I didn't look back. Clara, this pawn, had fallen from her self-proclaimed high position. Now she was just an insignificant piece on the board. Ever since the grain shortage incident was exposed in the village, the atmosphere had become noticeably tense. The foreman began a gradual investigation, and Martha and Clara became increasingly anxious and restless. They tried various means to cover up the truth, but in my eyes, those panicked actions only exposed more flaws. One morning, as I was busy tidying up the house, a sudden commotion came from outside. Through the window, I saw a Jeep parked at the village entrance. A tall figure in a military uniform was walking towards the village. It was my sister, Isabel. I froze instantly, my eyes warming, my nose tingling. The feelings of grievance, suppression, and isolation since my rebirth surged up like a tide. I almost instinctively rushed out the door, running towards her. Isabel! I cried out, my voice choked. Isabel stopped, looked toward the sound of my voice, her brow furrowing slightly, then relaxing. A touch of tenderness flashed in her eyes. Elara! The next moment, I threw myself into her arms, tears streaming down my face. I mumbled, Isabel, how did you get here? I thought I'd never see you again. She gently patted my back, her voice gentle yet tinged with heartache. Silly girl, why are you crying like this? Mom and Dad asked me to come see you. They even sent some things. I heard you were doing well here. Why are you crying like a baby? I sniffled hard, composed myself, but still couldn't resist playfully hitting her chest. You have no idea how much I've suffered here. You don't know how they bullied me. Her expression immediately darkened, a chill in her eyes. Elara, tell me, who bullied you? I'll teach them a lesson for you. Seeing her serious face, I couldn't help but smile, shaking my head. Isabel, I can handle these things. Just you coming to see me already makes me very happy. You silly girl, still trying to act tough, she sighed, looking around. But the atmosphere in this village feels off. Has something happened? I nodded. I said in a low voice, the village is currently investigating a grain shortage. Many accounts have problems. I suspect someone embezzled the grain and used the community project as a cover. She was slightly taken aback, her tone becoming more serious. This kind of thing is no small matter. Do you know who did it? I have clues, but I need more solid evidence, I said gravely, a flicker of determination in my eyes. Isabel, can you help me? She nodded, her gentle expression replaced by a soldier's sternness. Don't worry, with me here, they won't get away with anything. My sister's arrival gave me much more confidence. To find conclusive evidence as quickly as possible, after discussing with the foreman, we decided to temporarily set a bait to see if anyone would take it. I deliberately placed some falsified account books in the village committee's archive room and had the foreman intentionally let it be known that the audit results would be announced in a few days. Sure enough, in less than 2 days, the account books in the archive room were secretly tampered with, and several new forged entries were added. A few days later, the village held an audit meeting. The foreman stood in the center of the meeting room, her expression serious. In this audit, we found many problems. Some accounts have clearly been tampered with. Today, in front of everyone, we are going to make things clear. Then she gestured for me to bring out the account books. I walked to the front, laid out the books page by page, and pointed to several suspicious entries. These entries should be normal records of grain distribution, but as you can see, the alteration marks here are very obvious, and in some places, even the signatures have been manually changed. The villagers below immediately started murmuring. Someone said angrily, "Who would be so bold as to mess with the grain?" Martha sat in the crowd, her face turning ashen, but she still forced herself to remain calm. Foreman, I don't think this evidence is enough to prove anything. Perhaps it's just some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Isabel's voice suddenly rang out. She stood beside the foreman, dressed in her military uniform, her gaze cold. A misunderstanding that caused several families to receive less grain? A misunderstanding that allowed you to improperly alter important team records? Martha, do you think everyone here is blind and can't see these problems? Martha turned pale under her sharp gaze, opened her mouth but couldn't utter a word of rebuttal. Just then, a villager rushed into the meeting room holding a piece of paper, shouting excitedly, "Foreman, I just found a receipt in the corner of the warehouse. It shows where the grain went." The foreman took the receipt, glanced at it, and her face immediately darkened. Well, well. So this batch of grain was sold to peddlers from another village. And there's a signature on it. Martha, what else do you have to say? I don't know. Martha was sweating profusely, babbling incoherently. You don't know. Then who altered these accounts? Who sold this grain? The foreman's voice was ice cold. Martha, from today onwards, your position is revoked. You will no longer be in charge of the community project's affairs. As for your issues, we will report them to the higher authorities for handling. The villagers applauded, many angrily remarking, "It should have been like this long ago. We never liked her." Martha slumped into her chair, her face deathly pale. Clara, even more so, kept her head down, trembling all over. After the audit meeting ended, I stood in the yard watching the sunset. My heart felt light. My sister walked over to me and patted my shoulder. "Alara, you did well this time. Mom and Dad will be very proud when they find out." I smiled and said softly, "Isabel, thank you. If it weren't for you this time, I might not have made it through alone." The setting sun bathed us in its glow. I looked up at her smile, feeling an unprecedented sense of peace. The day I left the village with her, I stood by the Jeep, looking back at the familiar land. My heart was filled with mixed emotions. This land had witnessed my rebirth and struggles, and had also taught me to fight back and grow in adversity. Just then, the foreman hurried over, holding a small cloth pouch. "Alara, this should be returned to its rightful owner," she said, handing over the pouch, her eyes holding a complex mix of emotions. I took the pouch, and my heart skipped a beat. It was my Jade pendant, the one I once cherished, my mother's heirloom that was stolen from me in my past life. Now, it was finally back in my hands. "Foreman, this is—" I asked. My voice choked. "A few days ago, during the audit, we found it among some supplies in a corner of the warehouse." The foreman sighed. "I guess those people were too greedy and hid it, planning to sell it later. Luckily, they didn't get the chance, otherwise it might have really been lost or destroyed." I clutched the pendant tightly, tears welling up in my eyes. This pendant was not just a memento from my mother, but also the starting point of my rebirth. Its return seemed to bring a perfect conclusion to everything. A few days later, I went with my sister Isabel to her military base and joined the Army entertainment troupe. Life in the military camp gave me a sense of order and security I had never felt before. And what struck me most was the magical power of the pendant. Back in the village, I had already discovered that skin soaked in the enchanted spring water from the pendant became smoother, and drinking the enchanted water long-term could relieve fatigue and boost energy. I told my sister about the effects of the enchanted water. She was astonished. "Alara, this pendant is truly extraordinary. You must cherish it. Perhaps it can help even more people." In the military camp, I started using the pendant's enchanted water to help my friends. The women in the entertainment troupe often got tired from long rehearsals, so I secretly added the enchanted water to their drinking water. I found that everyone's stamina and mental state improved significantly. "Alara, I've been feeling so energetic lately, and I'm sleeping much better," a dancer from the troupe said to me with a smile. I smiled without saying anything, a sense of gratification in my heart. The pendant's power was quietly changing my life. After one rehearsal, as I was organizing props backstage, I suddenly heard a familiar deep voice. "Comrade, yeah, today's performance was wonderful." I looked up. It was Commander Eva. She stood at the doorway dressed in a crisp military uniform, her features striking, with a distinct air of calm composure. "Commander Eva." I smiled slightly and nodded. "I heard you joined the entertainment troupe. I didn't expect you to adapt so quickly," she said as she walked in, her gaze falling on me, a hint of approval on her face. "Many people helped me. I was just doing my best," I replied modestly. She looked at me for a moment, then suddenly said, "Comrade, yeah, I remember when you first arrived, you didn't look this well. You're very different now." I was taken aback, then immediately thought of the pendant's effect. This heirloom from my mother not only protected me, but also allowed me to regain strength in adversity. Perhaps it was what made me feel so renewed. As time went by, my relationship with Commander Eva gradually grew closer. She wasn't the type to easily open up, but her stability and thoughtfulness made me feel at ease. One evening, she asked me to take a walk with her in the small woods next to the camp. The afterglow of the sunset stretched long shadows on the ground. She suddenly stopped, turned, and looked at me. "Alara, there's something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I've wanted to tell you," she said, her eyes full of sincerity. "What is it?" I looked up at her, my heart racing. She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I like you. From the first time I saw you, I felt you were different from others. Hearing this, I was a bit stunned, my face slightly flushing. Elara, I know you've been through a lot, but I hope you can believe that the future will be better, she continued, her eyes full of tenderness. Looking at her sincere gaze, my heart gradually softened. I nodded gently. Ava, thank you. I'm also willing to believe in the future. And just as I was gradually adapting to my new life, news about Clara and Martha arrived. I heard that after they were sent back to the village, they constantly argued, blaming each other for their downfall. The two of them eventually came to blows in a fierce dispute, both ending up injured and hospitalized. Later, the county investigation uncovered more of their misdeeds, and they completely lost any chance of making a comeback. When I heard this news, I felt no ripples in my heart. The tragic end of this wicked pair was simply the retribution for their own selfishness and greed.